Home baking has undergone a huge resurgence over the past few years, with more and more people choosing to make real, additive-free bread from their own kitchens. And with a wide variety of bread makers on the market, it's never been easier to make delicious, wholesome bread at home. To help you get the most out of your bread maker, we travelled here to Patrick Moore's Artisan Bakery in the Lake District to get some expert advice. So Patrick, what advice would you give to someone who's been making everyday loaves in their machine successfully, but now wants to spice things up a bit, experiment a bit with their bread maker?
I think there's an awful lot of variations now that people can do by mixing different grains together, like spelt and white spelt and rye, and then you've got all your add-ins, things like cheeses, nuts, soaked seeds, different dried fruits, there's cranberries, sour cherries, toasted grains that have been soaked overnight so they don't actually rob moisture from the loaf. You know, that's a really nice one to, keep a wholemeal loaf lovely and moist.
So, I mean, a lot of bread makers now have specific programs for these speciality breads. Which ones would you recommend people tackle first, which give like the best results most easily?
Well, I think there's several there really to go at. I would say the mixture of white spelt and wholemeal spelt is a good place to begin, like kind of a 50-50 ratio between those two. And then, to the kind of extreme scale of 100% rye, which is, for me is a fantastic bread. Okay. And obviously it's wheat free as well, so it helps people sometimes who may have a special diet or just want to eat less wheat.
And adding things like nuts or dried fruit, I know some machines have an automatic dispenser, but is that necessary, or can you just chuck it in at the start and it normally comes out okay? Or
yeah, some things are best added into the actual mix before it's put into the bread maker, but seeds and nuts and that kind of thing, they can be damaged and actually damage the texture of the loaf by going in too early. So if your machine does have a dispenser, then that's definitely a good thing.
And what about types of yeast? I know a lot of bread maker recipes ask for easy blend dried yeast. Is that the only one you should be using?
I think that dried yeast is the easy blend yeast, which is mixed into the dough, is the yeast that's best for using in a bread maker. The important thing is that the yeast that you have to soak really before you start, the machine doesn't give you an option to do that, so it's not really suitable.
And what about the dough setting on bread makers? Is that a useful program?
The dough setting's ideal really for mixing up doughs like focaccias and ciabattas, and also for things like little rolls. And
then what would you bake that in the oven afterwards?
Yeah, just bake it in the traditional oven. If you've got a fan oven, obviously that helps as well, and a lot of people mist the oven with a spray of water before putting the rolls in, just to improve the crust as well.
So I know you're a real fan of long fermentation breads. Can you tell me what's better about this type of bread, and can you make it in the bread maker?
Long fermentation breads are truer to the flavour of the kind of wheat or the product used in the bread. But our main reason for it is because we believe it's actually easier to digest as well, because of the way that the starches are converted, which obviously helps the flavour of the loaf.
So what about making bread in a bread maker? Does that mean it's better to use the longer cycles, and will that affect the flavour?
I think the longer cycles certainly help. It's the length of the proof and the temperature which it's held at, which I think could do with some improvement to give people the opportunity of making a really long fermentation bread with a much smaller amount of yeast, converting those starches more slowly.
Try mixing different grains together, such as spelt and rye, for different flavours and textures. Use add-ins such as cheeses, nuts, soaked or toasted seeds and grains, and dried fruits. Easy blend dried yeast is the most suitable yeast for bread makers. Use the dough setting for breads such as ciabatta, focaccia and rolls, and bake them in the oven. Use the longest cycle available on your bread maker for the best results.